This is the Shadow Chronicles podcast. We are here to take a deep dive into the inner work, generational trauma, and your shadows. Having those hard conversations so you don't have to. You know, all of that shit that just does not get spoken about. In the third drawer down, in the dark, hidden away. My name is Sky, and I'm a shadow integration specialist. I am here to help guide you on your journey to unfuck yourself by integrating your shadows, healing the generational trauma, so you can vibrate with confidence and just fucking love your life.
And my name is Todd, who's an integrative health coach. I help people own more of who they are, change their lives on many different levels to become who they really are. Find your compass and follow it, to say it simply.
And welcome back. This is episode 6. We are going to have some fun today. There is some...
More fun.
More fun? I was going to say juicy, interesting, like hard-hitting. Like, how would you describe what we're going to talk about today?
All of the above.
All of the above?
It's one of those subjects that requires you to have a fairly rapid level of self-awareness and self-ownership. Like,
yeah, as well as, yeah, like a...
As though everything else we've talked about isn't exactly that, but this is just that different level of things. It's one thing to own something in your head. This is a new subject about owning your part in everyday interactions.
That's it.
And it's a little bit more in your face for that.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. It's like owning it, but then also looking at what you're projecting out and how you are acting and reacting to what other people are, you know, putting out, saying, projecting out, all of those sort of things as well.
And deciding how much of their stuff that you do or don't want to own as either triggered by you or no, that's a them thing.
Yeah, most definitely. So touching back on our last episode when we had a discussion on like
just boundary
works, like how do you know, when you start actually looking at someone else's trauma and what you are willing and not willing to put up with behavioural wise within relationships. Like
no amount of trauma gives you excuses to be kind of a shitty person to everyone else.
Exactly, you know, and, you know, so we had a really cool discussion about, you know, the difference between someone's inability to take accountability and just go, well, I'm like this because X, Y, Z, or this happened to me. And then, or another person's ability to go, I actually don't want to be like this. I'm going to, you know, go to therapy, confront it, do the work needed. So I'm not, you know, a ball of trauma responses and triggers and, you know, all of the things.
Stabbiness.
And how people then tend to have a little bit more or a lot more really patience and grace for someone who is actively, you know, doing the work to help themselves. They're more likely to hold space and understand what's happening rather than, you know, either one person saying, I'm just like this because of X, Y, Z, and then, you know, their partner, friend, family, whoever it may be, you know, is stuck in that people pleaser cycle where they're like, oh, they're just like that because they've had a hard life, and essentially accepting the shitty behavior, you know. So
codependency, basically.
Exactly, like that codependency. So today we're going to actually really dive into things of like self-advocacy versus selfishness, self-obsession, like, you know, narcissism, healthy boundaries, self-awareness, and respect for yourself and others, and like where the fuck's the line in that?
Well, the short answer is where you decide it is based on how much this person matters to you relative to how much you matter to you. Yeah. But even then, that's a super open-ended thing I've just said.
Right. Well, a lot of, all of, you know, your inner work, your journey, personal development, whatever it is very open-ended. Like,
how long is a piece of string?
Yeah, exactly. You know, everyone's
how traumatic is trauma?
Yeah,
like,
everyone's experience is completely different because you view everything from your model of the world. So one person's experience, you know, can be completely different to another one, and then, you know, their lines, their boundaries may be completely different to another person as well. So,
and that's allowed.
Yeah, it's more of discovering what, you know, where your line is, how long is your piece of string. You know, so
which is why the boundaries conversation is relevant as well. It's like you set your boundaries where they make sense to you, because if they don't make sense to you, like, well, why are you doing it? Because you're not going to either reinforce them or hold them at all.
Exactly. And like, even as we said,
well, they won't serve you.
Yeah. Even I think as we mentioned in our last episode as well, like if your ability to, you know, have boundaries is your ability to uphold those boundaries, you know, like you can place a boundary all you fucking want, but if you are not willing to uphold and enforce that boundary, which is self-advocacy, then your boundary is no fucking good. Like, it's not a boundary, it's just a bunch of words.
Worse, it's lies you tell yourself to make yourself feel better that are used as ammunition to shame yourself for not doing it properly, and when it actually comes up, which is more evidence that you suck and you can't hold boundaries, or something equally self-depreciating as that.
Yeah. So, self-advocacy versus selfishness or self-obsession. What does that look like to you, Todd?
In terms of the behaviors that play out, or in terms of how that works inside someone?
A little from column A and a little from column B.
Cool. We may have mentioned this stuff about self-awareness once or twice before. Can you remember us ever bringing it up? Yeah.
No.
Okay. It's just me. I'm imagining shit. It inside of yourself, I think it's a conversation about that check-in to go, like, it's still always boiling down to, like, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
Okay. Because to be able to have self-advocacy of yourself, you've got to actually have some idea of what it is that you want out of this situation. And whether that's a rational outcome, reasonable, like compromised outcome that serves both people, or if maybe it's just walking away, or getting exactly what you want and that other person can eat a dick. Or however else you want to frame it.
You've come out very sweary today. I'm normally the very sweary one.
You haven't got your earrings in.
Oh, okay.
You haven't given yourself permission or something, I guess. In terms of how that would play out, I think it's having some framed idea of, how do I want this interaction to go? Because this is what I want. This is what I'm prepared to compromise on.
Yeah.
This is how I want to walk away with this. And this is ideally how I'd like to the other person to be able to walk away from this.
Yeah.
It's almost like a moment-to-moment negotiation with yourself and them.
Yep.
For that preferred outcome, knowing that, you know, compromise is what it is because it's to be pursued, but it also inherently means that no one gets everything they want out of that interaction.
Yeah.
Unless what you want is people enjoying a peaceful, productive interaction.
Well, that's really the goal, isn't it? Like,
you'd like to think so, especially when it's like your intimate partner or someone you do genuinely care about. It's like, this is, and walking in with that as the intent, it's like, this is someone I care about.
Yeah.
Do I want them to walk away angry because I wanted the last piece of pizza? As an example.
Yeah.
And you'd like to hope that the other person on the other side of the table is able to have that kind of conversation as well. Like, do I want that pizza, or is this person more important than pizza?
Yeah.
Maybe. It depends on the person and how good that pizza really is. But in terms of that, the balance of self-advocacy versus that selfishness, that's kind of where it seems like the tip. And again, it's that how long is a piece of string sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you dealing with?
Yep.
What is this really about?
Yeah. So, like, I like to think, and this is like when we were having a chat before we recorded about it, is like, as you said, like that self-advocacy is the ability to, you know, in plain and simple terms, advocate for yourself, who you are, you know, what you want, what your worth is, what you're willing and not willing to be putting up with, you know, all of those sort of things.
And being present with that.
And as you said, like having the ability to have that healthy conversation where, you know, you can see all sides.
And the willingness to do that.
And
that's what empathy is.
Yeah, just to see all sides and, you know, what you want or what your ideal goal out of whatever interaction it is. You know, and then if you don't get that, you know, what your ideal outcome is, well, then you have a decision to make to, one, advocate for yourself further and, as you said, like walk away or anything like that. But then to lean on to the other side of it where it comes to a bit more like a selfishness, when you say like self-advocacy to selfishness to me that sounds like if you're having an interaction with someone and you've walked in to advocate for yourself and the person that you're interacting with, or even the person that is having the conversation, however it works, is not willing to listen actively to what you're trying to say, automatically goes on to attack or defense of like, you know, and is not willing to do anything or, you know, and then leans into things like emotional manipulation and all of that sort of stuff because
the hard-nosed negotiation tactics. Yeah. Constant. Oh, well, I'll just leave. We're never going to get what we want. I'll just walk.
Or it's like, well, I guess I'm just a shit person or anything like that. I heard that enough in my life.
I've seen that before too.
You know, which is more on that selfishness side because they are not for, you know, then not so much for other people because I'm not, you know, advocating for things like people pleasing and stuff like that. But it's more of a case of going, hang on a minute here, what is actually happening? So all human beings are designed to nurture other human beings. Like we thrive on connection.
We are built for it.
Exactly. We're all built for it. Slightly different energetics and how that plays out, but we're all essentially built for it. So the level of self-advocacy is the ability to put yourself first, to look after yourself, to like say no, to place those healthy boundaries down to not what is not meant for you and stuff like that. So you're able to, you know, recover, you know, systems not in a state of flight and fight, all of those sort of things. But then, you know, it's like the telltale, like, being a mum, what I get told all the time and what I try and teach a lot of people is you can't look after someone else if you're not willing to look after yourself. You know, you can only
pouring from an empty cup.
Yeah, exactly that pouring from an empty cup thing. So, you know, that in itself is self-advocacy. My brain's like not braining today.
Self-advocacy?
Advocacy. Thank you.
I knew what you meant. I'm prepared to put money on the fact that everyone else at home knows exactly what you meant as well. Yeah,
exactly.
We're all in Team Sky, you know that, right?
Right, that's it. My dyslexic brain doesn't like me sometimes.
It's just letters, it's fine.
Yeah, and we're not going to go in the tangent of how English language is fucked.
We'll be here for several episodes.
When we lean into the other side of like selfishness and self-obsession, that is when everything that you do is literally for self. You have no care for the person around you. You are only doing things to get the outcome that you want and your willingness to manipulate the situation in order to do so. So, you know, things like words like gaslighting and stuff like that come into it.
Last episode we were talking about boundaries and the necessity of boundaries, not only protecting you from others, but from a certain point of view, protecting others from you. And this is kind of the discussion. Like, so if you're that person who is having what you think is a fair-minded, well-intentioned negotiation with someone else and then just coming out with some bollocks.
Yeah.
That's when your self-advocacy counts for more. That's when your boundary counts for more. Assuming, of course, that the person on the other side of the table is there with the best of intentions as well. It's like that's part of the process of figuring out where they're at, what they're really here for. It could be argued that that's what the best negotiators do. They know what they want. They're very clear on that. And then they spend time investing in, well, what does this person want? What do they need? How do we get that?
Yeah.
But if all they need is to feel powerful by trying to take your power in this conversation, because ultimately that's what a narcissist kind of is.
Yeah.
Is that someone who feels so powerless about themselves, they've got to go out and manipulate and take everyone else's to attempt to validate who they wish they were as opposed to who they genuinely think they are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this plays out in that way. That's what it looks like. So it's like, if you're that person, then ultimately the balance is found within you.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you where that is.
No, neither can I. Only you can find your line. Where is your line?
And that's a trial and error thing as well. And that's a thing that's very dependent on exactly who it is you're interacting with. Like if you've had experience with this person, you know that they push the envelope sometimes, then you go into that going, all right, well, I need to be a little bit more secure in my boundaries and where I know the line is and what I'm actually here to look for.
Yeah.
It kind of gets a little bit awkward in a way, because if you know you're about to deal with someone that we could label as, say, selfish or narcissistic, and we're going to talk about how literally way too commonly that word's thrown around in a minute. But they almost out of necessity drag you down to a level of perceivable selfishness within yourself to ensure that you are not being taken advantage of as well. And this is, I guess, the tricky balance. It's like, are you being selfish? Or how do you feel as you're negotiating for yourself? Are you trying to take something from them, or are you trying to give something to you?
Yeah.
And it matters.
And I find a lot of the times, you know, when that question is asked, a lot of the times it is, I'm trying to give something to me. You know,
that's, I think, the huge difference between, it's like the difference between niceness and kindness.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you being nice? Well, I want them to give me something. It's like, well,
that's
kind of like, yeah, that's almost borderline manipulation.
Yeah.
You just put a pleasant word on it that's known as nice, whereas kindness, no, I'm here to give something because I have it to give and I choose to give it. It's not the same thing at all.
No, that's it.
We'll go into that way deeper some other time as well. Sorry, you were saying.
Oh, I don't remember now.
Okay.
You
It's like 13 whole seconds ago. My bad.
Right. That's okay. No, but you what you said is, you know, completely right. And I just remember what I was about to say. So, you know, when we're, you know, having those conversations, and I think as well in the process of learning how to put our own thoughts, ideas, opinions, whatever that case may be, forward, and having those difficult conversations of, you know, trying to give something to yourself, you know, and put yourself first and look after yourself, and whatever that case may be, is that not everyone is going to agree with you, you know, and, you know, the ability to have healthy relationships is the fact that, you know, between whoever it is, whether it's family, friends, you know, romantic partners, whatever the case may be, is that, you know, you can see someone else's point of view. You may not agree with it, but that doesn't bother you, and it's not a thing. Too many people, and I don't know whether it's the world of the fucking internet or the fact that no one really knows, you know, or not very many people really know how to take shit that they don't necessarily agree with, is that they're, as you said, like that word of like, oh, I don't like that opinion you have. You're a narcissist. You know, you think like that. You're narcissistic.
It's like,
hang on a minute.
It's become so weaponized. It's not like, you know, with...
You pulled the face.
It's like calling someone a racist or calling someone a bigot or prejudiced. It's like, is that what's actually going on? Or is that a word that quite understandably has some pretty negative implications to the person it's used towards.
Yeah.
But you're like, is that your way of winning the argument as opposed to using it in an appropriate and contextually correct way?
Because that's it. Like,
it's like, all right, you watch those internet arguments and you're like, how long before someone calls the other person Hitler?
Right.
Like, because that's when you know you've hit critical mass flame war on the internet. It's like a disagreement is almost the race to call someone something that trumps everything else.
Yeah.
How is that healthy? How are you going to have a constructive conversation that isn't just buried under disingenuous intentions?
Yeah.
Again, it's like, if you're not aware of how you're going into a conversation and being aware that this person may have the value of the conversation's best interest at heart, or they may be there to just win.
Yeah.
And will do some stuff, say some stuff that either helps or hinders the conversation, and then if they're lucky, allows them to blame you for the breakdown in communication.
Yeah.
It's kind of why shadow work matters. Like, you've got to be aware that this is sometimes how people work, and that being formidable enough to hold your own ground and be secure in yourself to withstand that kind of matters.
Yeah, most definitely.
And that's, like, again, you're giving something to yourself. You're giving yourself peace in an otherwise chaotic conversation, argument, interaction. Even if you're not necessarily ever going to get what you actually wanted, which is a reasonable compromise for both parties. Kind of went off on a...
Just you did a little bit, but that's okay.
Hopefully it's vaguely relevant.
But that's it. So, like, you know, when we're talking about this, like, you know, giving things back to yourself, advocating for yourself, all of those, like, placing those boundaries down, putting you first, all of that sort of stuff in a very healthy manner, you know. And like, as I mentioned, sometimes the uncomfortable thing is when you start to do that, is that you are called those things.
And because of old behaviours and stigmas, you probably believe it up to a point.
Well, that's it. Like, I was having a conversation with my best friend a few days ago, actually, and, you know, she was wanting some advice, and I was
Shout out to Sky's best friend.
And I was going through, you know, things of like shadow and, like, you know, because she was having an interesting experience. And I was going through wounding and shadow and, you know, all of these sort of things. And like, 'cause she's done a fucking epic amount of growth, right? Like, she has come so far to the same human that I'd seen, like, you know, that I've known all of my life pretty much. And like, even she, like, on the phone, and I was going through all this sort of stuff, and I was like, you know, how these people or these shadow show up as mirrors and all this sort of stuff. And she was like, am I the narcissist now? And I was like, fucking no. I was like, no, you're not. There is a complete fucking difference between having healthy boundaries and drawing your line in the sand and saying, I am worth more than this. If you're, you know, not willing to either somewhat come to the party, then I'm going to go that way, you know, and all of that sort of stuff. And I think because this was her first real experience of actually standing up for herself and advocating for what, you know, for her worth in that space, that she was like, oh, fuck, have I, like, you know, completely gone out the other end?
Well, I was about to say, like, it's a very reasonable question to ask, because at least then you're honestly checking yourself to make sure you haven't overcorrected. Because, like, let's be honest, no matter what context you want to throw the word narcissist around, the reason they are that in that little clinical diagnosed or like just kind of self-obsessed is effectively an overcorrection of having power taken from them and not believing they have any. So they've gone so far out the other side. So, like, asking that question, like, it's valuable.
Yeah.
Am I the asshole? Well, it's a question that compels you to recheck in with who you are and why you're doing the things you're doing. And if you're lucky and you ask the right person, getting a little bit of triangulation, because I speak English, so that if you're still learning where that line is, you can ask someone you trust to go,
what's going on?
Probably didn't need to say that, but no, you're actually sort of checking yourself. Like you're doing very reasonable, understandable, self-advocative things that make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's it as well. And you know, through this conversation, none of it was for her. Like, as I said, I'm like, well, why, you know, what can you see? What do you want? Like, you know, what is this all about? And it was literally all about like the community, I'm going to say community or relationship or whatever. But it was, you know, because she could see potential in that. She could see growth. She could see, you know, all of those sort of things. It had nothing to do with her wanting to control. It was more of a case of like, well, this is where I am. This is what I want. This is, you know, and all this sort of stuff. Like, and she was continually getting, you know, a whole bunch of projection, you know, given back to her essentially. And, you know, that's when she was like, hang on a minute, am I the arsehole? Because like, and I'm like, no, it's like, find the line. Like, what are you willing to put up with? Are you willing to put up with this? If the answer is, you know, yes, then that's a conversation you need to have. If the answer is no, there is nothing wrong with that. And this is the thing, whether or not, like, where, you know, I have my own theories where I believe it's come from, but we are all different. It's the point. Like, we all have all different.
We're more the same than we are different, but the differences are why we're valuable to one another.
Exactly. So it's, you know, so we're not meant for everyone, and everyone's not meant for us.
Good luck to you if you think that's not true.
You know, and that's the thing. This is where it's, you know, especially for, you know, like the people pleasers and stuff like that, is they have such a high fear of rejection that they feel like they have to, you know, be everybody's friend or be there for everybody and all of this sort of stuff. And when you start to break that down, it's just like that whole fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, you know, that's like a whole conversation for another day. But it's like then when you come back to, you know, the having conversations, having opinions, having things that someone else doesn't agree with, it doesn't necessarily mean that person is right, wrong, good or bad. It just means that that person is different. And if that doesn't align with you, fucking cool. Off you go. There's your line. There's how you're advocating for yourself, because this does not align with me. So therefore I'm going to go find a space that does align with me, rather than trying to condition everybody again. Because that was you know, the massive thing is like, if you didn't fit into this little box, you know, you're out of the tribe.
Yeah.
And like
daunting.
Generations, welcome to generational trauma. Generations have been trying to squeeze themselves into this little box to the point where they've cut, you know, so many parts of themselves, hello shadow, that they're now coming out of this space. Again, using my friend as an example, they're coming out of this space and they're going, and they're creating that balance within themselves about advocating for themselves, but then also nurturing somebody else and finding that balance between, you know, like what is me giving too much of myself without that, you know, balance in return, and what is like me, as you said, being a fucking arsehole where I'm only taking and all of that sort of stuff. And unfortunately what's happening is like, that's it. A lot of these people are breaking these cycles. They're, you know, putting the boundaries down, whether it's leaving relationships, whether it's, you know, actually having hard conversations in those relationships and to try and, you know, make them healthy and all of that sort of stuff. And it's like, then they're getting all these other like venom spewed on because the other side of the party is triggered and they're like, oh, well, you're the narcissist then.
Nobody gives power back.
No.
And what you just described is the way in which people create a situation where they hold on to power for as long as they can. That's that gaslighting conversation. That's the trying to convince you that you're the asshole for wanting something different.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, well, that's how they keep hold of that power over you.
And that's more done in that selfishness way, you know.
And it's still going to come down to, like, what is your intent?
Yeah.
Is it your intent to just be you, or is it intent for them to be less? I think that's the deciding factor in what is the real difference between selfish and self-advocacy, let alone all the other delineations of what else we could call selfishness.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the conversations that come up about self-care.
Yep.
I usually sort of ask people, like, oh, you know, it's not all bath bombs and getting your nails done and all that sort of stuff, going out with the boys and watching the footy or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
That's
doing something for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't know how you frame it, but I frame it as like self-care is actually looking after yourself like someone you care about.
You just reverse it. It's like, do you care about yourself?
Yeah.
And what does showing you that you care about yourself look like? Maybe it is getting your nails done and a bath bomb here or there. Maybe it's going to the gym and kicking the shit out of the kickback because that feels good.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of like endorphins out the other side of it, sort of thing. And it sort of allows you to feel potent and powerful without necessarily hurting someone or yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Is it, you know, or is it making sure you're getting enough sleep? Because you know what happens when you don't sleep. So you're going to, you know.
You think everyone hates you.
You know,
or
so
vice versa.
Almost, you know, treat yourself like your small child and, you know, make sure you go to bed on time because you know that when they have a good sleep, they are, you know, better able to move through the day. Is it making sure that you're eating well enough for who, you know, for your body and your body type?
What you need to do.
For what you need to do. You know, is it, you know, turning all of your screens off? Or is it taking a break from social media and sitting in stillness? Like sometimes, like self-care can be really fucking uncomfortable.
The point of bringing that up as a subject is because what you do to care about yourself can easily look like selfishness to other people. It depends on, again, how you frame it within your own self. Like, is this me caring about myself, or is this me showing off to other people and making myself seem awesome for that?
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, like, yeah,
I got a remedial massage the other day, and you're sort of rubbing that into your friend's face who just doesn't have the time or the disposable money to sort of have that.
Yeah.
It's like, so you caring about yourself is taking someone else's like feeling state.
Yeah, that too. Or even like I've been called selfish many of times. You know, for going to the gym, for the times that I can't get to the gym and that my children are home, that I train at home with my children, for doing the certifications that I'm doing.
How dare you improve yourself?
Right.
What a bitch.
Yeah, for, you know, presenting, you know, in women's festivals, ultimately, pretty much.
Who the fuck is telling you that you're selfish for presenting?
I think it's mainly because it's not necessarily from what I'm doing, but I know
it's what you're not doing, which is just
being at home
waiting on your children hand and foot.
Yeah, exactly. It's because I've left my kids with my husband while
the other parent,
right? Yeah, funny that.
As opposed to an invalid.
Yeah, so yeah, and they're like, then I've been perceived as all I do is shit for myself. So therefore, because I'm all about myself, I'm selfish. And this is that interesting projection, like narcissist fucking thing, because it's like, hang on a minute. Yeah, like as you said, what part of me improving myself is selfish? What part of me doing what I do and allowing, you know, my partner to, you know, actually fucking be the default parent for once? Because, you know, he's FIFO guy, so he works away. You know, but like, Yeah, it's, and this is that interesting, you know, someone else's opinion.
I'm glad you brought it back to that.
Yeah.
Because what I was going to say was, this is what it looks like when someone just doesn't understand the things that you're doing from that well-intentioned place for yourself. It's like, if they don't go to the gym, and they say, why are you going to the gym all the time? It's like, they will never get it, and you will cop the backlash of their lack of understanding. If you went and had a mani-pedi and a couple of glasses of rosé with them, sort of things. Oh, no, that's not selfish. That's just like you looking after yourself.
Yeah.
It's that distinction. Like, the lack of understanding is probably at the root cause of like a lot of human suffering.
Well,
if we want to like really bigger picture, it's like, well, you know, what's racism really? Really? Yeah. It's not understanding that the person in front of you is just a slightly different flavored human and fucking getting on with it. Yeah. It's like, if you don't understand that, well, you're going to make all sorts of assumptions and projections. Oh, they're not us, so they're them, so fuck those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, I would argue, the difference between like self-advocacy and selfishness is like, if they just don't understand and aren't willing to at least invest a little bit of thought into trying to understand, how can you have empathy? How can you have some understanding? How can you have good intentions for the person across from you, let alone for yourself, and have a valuable outcome for that? Yeah. Like, what are we here for? Like, right?
Yeah, that's it.
The irony being that you said it before, it's like, we are built for connection. We do not work properly without something along those lines on some level. If you're making that more difficult, that's a you thing. Yeah. If you're interacting with someone who's making that more difficult, that's a them thing. Yeah. Either way, you've got to handle your shit in the face of them, or just actually owning you. Right. Is that enough of a rant?
I think so. Todd has his thinky face on.
No, there's a lot of tangents that we could go in that I just brought up. Maybe a good one to sort of invest in is the frequency by which the word narcissism is brought up and how
probably the same
abused it is.
Well, probably the same frequency as the word empath is brought up and used.
Oh, we'll get to that. I think before we press record, we were talking about the idea that they are the polar opposite ends of the same thing. Yeah. Whether it's the abused version of it or the literal version of it.
Yeah, well, like, so there is the literal version, which is narcissistic personality disorder.
Which is the real thing.
Yeah. And then there's also, you know, people that are empaths and healers and all of those sort of things, which are on emotional connection basis and stuff.
It's a profoundly different energetic interaction.
100%. And then when you come into like what I would say like modern day, like the word like narcissism and empaths and stuff like that, it's like when you know, and I've even seen like I'm going to like go into the empath line a little bit here, and I've even seen it.
So you do empath, I'll do narcissist.
Right. Did you just like see how that was like a massive generalization and stereotype? Like, I'm the woman and I'm doing the empath and you're the...
Why are you taking it there, Sky? Why are you taking that personally?
No, but there's even a lot of things like throwing around the internet of like dark empath or toxic empath and all of those sort of things. And, you know, like when you dig into them, like especially when you dig into things like toxic empath, that's people pleaser. Like if you dig into it, you are literally have been conditioned to completely abandon yourself and take on everyone else's, you know, emotions. You have been taught to read a room because, you know, from a very young age, you were, you know, having to emotionally regulate your parents. So therefore you had to do and act accordingly. So you grow up into a space of, you know, taking that into your relationships and, you know, it's your responsibility to make everyone else happy and all this sort of stuff. And if you dare to, you know, want something for yourself, then you're like, you've perceived yourself as selfish.
Ew.
That's not empath. That is people pleaser. And I think that a lot of people have used that as a pretty word for what it actually is. And that is, you've been conditioned to be a people pleaser. You can fucking dress it up however you want. Oh, I'm just an empath. That's why I attract these narcissists. No, you're a people pleaser. That's why you attract those personalities.
You're a wound buddy, and rightly or wrongly, you're looking for codependency.
Right, exactly. And then you look into dark empath, and that is, you know, the stage of, you know, healing when they're placing boundaries down and, you know, being self-advocating and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And I'm like, so you're doing the shadow work. You are healing. It's not dark. There's nothing dark about it. I was
going to say, I'm like,
it's you finding you, and okay, cool. And it's you learning what are your emotions and what are other people's emotions that you are taking on, and then, you know, making that decision of like, well, that's not my shit. I'm not taking that shit on. That's authenticity. That's healing. That's shadow work. There's nothing dark about it. And the whole, you know, line of like, oh, I'm a dark empath. You are healing, my love. Like, that you're not dark. You are going into the darkness and you are rewriting all of those patterns to bring yourself back into the light, which, you know, then you attract a different kind of personality types and all of those sort of things. But,
like,
you know,
convenient label to which to make sense of where you feel like you're at.
Yeah.
And hopefully not, but potentially almost a limitation on your growth and authenticity and integration of your shadow. Because I'm just a dark empath.
You've
like
just
the idea of labeling it,
is
almost like the boxing of that, and that's all you have to be now.
That's it. Yeah.
It's like,
What happens when the next stage comes through? You know, so, but those places come from a place of trauma. They come from a place of generational wounds. They come from a place of, you know, shutting down those parts of yourself so the other half completely over-exaggerates to, you know, fill the space.
This is the spectrum of narcissism and like in this version.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what narcissism is. It's the howling pit of insecurity that drives you to validate anything and everything by manipulating anything and everything around you. It comes from the exact same place. You've had your sense of self taken from you. You think you're not worth anything, whereas one extreme placates everyone around them in an attempt to be validated.
Yep.
Whereas the other version manipulates and attempts to control and take the power of everyone around them to be able to feel
Validated.
Worthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Both places come from a place of, you know, as you said, having yourself taken away, which then lowers your self-worth. So, unfortunately though, and this is where I find it as well, because when we are looking at the conditioned narcissist, and I think we've had this conversation before, like a year ago or something, and looking at the conditioned like empath, so the people pleaser, 9 times out of 10, the people pleaser will be the one to hit the limit and go, fuck this shit, I'm out, I'm done, something's got to change.
They have to, because a narcissist gets what they want.
Exactly.
So why would they change anything?
Yeah. So
it's shitty, but like they think they're still winning.
You know, they've shut off a whole part of themselves, but they're not willing to do that, like to, you know, do that shadow work, to reintegrate and all that sort of stuff. Not all of them, most of them. Like
it's why when you have the clinically diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, it's not that it's untreatable, but like unconditioning the behavioral set, the subconscious. Like it's so set in
Yeah.
that treating it is okay.
I love when you like think about your words.
Band-aiding it isn't a fair way to describe it, but it kind of is. It's effectively therapy to have someone check you weekly so that you can be reminded that, no, this is kind of how you roll, bro. If you don't want it to be that way, then you go and see this person with a clipboard writing stuff down about you so that they can tell you that you're kind of being a dick. And maybe you can dial that back if you want to have relationships that are worth having, as opposed to just rolling on.
Yeah.
Yep, that made sense. Cool. Winning.
But yeah, so it's, I don't know, I feel both of those spaces are like a space of shadow selves.
If I said that almost everything and anything we're going to talk about,
It's going to roll back to shadow.
it's going to roll back to that. It's going to roll back to how you think and feel about yourself. You don't feel like you're worth self-worth. Yeah, that'll do. Wow, that took a long time to get to. All of these things that we're talking about is ultimately, no matter what version, no matter what differentiation, no matter what word we associate with the front of it, is like basically self-worth.
All comes back down to self. And this is why, like, it's so important to look into self when you're going on this journey, when you're, whether it's personal development, whether it's shadow work, whether it's, healing, whether it's just whatever the fuck it is to you, whatever like name you use to call it, it's the ability to go back into self. It's
why it's in the names self-care and selfishness, self-advocacy, like, because it's a thing that's in you.
And only you can decide what that is.
Look, you can ask people for some help and a bit of templating and all that sort of stuff, but even then, it's still got to be a you thing that you're comfortable and happy with to work with, progress with, be you with.
And I feel like that's a constant balancing act. What do you think? Is there like a line, or is it like a constant balancing act? I know everyone just listens and goes, oh, fuck, it's a balancing act. Shit.
Yes. But I would argue there's elements of both.
Yes.
There is a line because there are, I would argue, some absolutely immutable fundamental truths about you as an individual that are so utterly integral to who you really are that throughout whatever version of human, whatever lifetime or like, whatever, ultimately the being that is you is going to have these things be true of them. Yeah.
And I guess you would almost even reframe that back to like, they're your non-negotiables.
I call them
line.
Core values from a certain point of view. It's like when you figure out what they are, that they make so much sense that you could not imagine being any other way other than this, because you've done the shadow work, you've unburied yourself from the conditioning elements, and you're like, I still want to do this because it's so true of me. Yeah. Now, when I say like that, then to say how you utilize those core values, those, what word did you use?
Non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables, those essential elements of you to navigate yourself, the world, the people around you, all of the above. That's the balancing act. Yeah. So how do you be authentic and true and genuine and honest with yourself and who you know you are without slapping other people in the face with it because you know with a certainty that they've got something true and fundamental about themselves that may just not gel with you.
Yeah.
And being cool with that.
And that's where respect comes in. Respect for yourself and respect for others.
And that's the balance.
Yeah.
Because where that line is different from moment to moment, day to day, person to person. And assuming that the person you're dealing with yesterday is going to be the same as tomorrow, it's reasonable, but you do that often enough, it might end up with you waking up one day and going, I don't know this fucking person at all.
Yeah.
They've changed and grown and or devolved. That's a not nice way to frame it, but you know what I mean. It's like they've become someone else, and now I'm sitting here going, something that I used as an assumption about the people I care about is no longer true. Where am I now?
Yeah.
Where are they now?
Exactly.
Do we grow apart? Do we grow together? Or does this make sense or not?
Yeah. And a lot of times that's it. Like, you know, as you said, if someone like ultimately changes to, you know, your assumption of them, that tends to mean that person has grown or you have grown. Because if you're doing the work, you're not the same person every single day.
You're built to grow and evolve.
Yeah.
It is fundamentally true of you on a physiological, psychological, and emotional, spiritual level.
Yeah.
It's just what you're built for.
You know, and sometimes, as you said, that means that people grow apart. That's okay. That's normal. That's what's like, you know, as I mentioned earlier on, it like not everyone's going to like us or you, and that's okay. And you're not going to like everyone either, and that's okay. You know, that doesn't have to come from a place of judgment or projection. That can still come from a place of love and self-love and go, well, I don't actually agree. Like, as you said, like this person's values don't align with me. That's not, you know, that's sometimes it's not necessarily a them problem or a you problem. That's just an is thing.
Yeah.
And that means that, you know, the train of life that you're on, that person has gotten off at that stop and has gone onto a different train and gone that way.
Especially if you address why you connected in the first place and how healthy that really was. Because then we could talk about like wound buddies and codependency as well. It's like we were never these people to each other. It's just that a certain level of conditioning or a certain amount of trauma made that true.
Yeah.
And recognizing that for what it is. And being okay with the growth you've made and the growth they've made, to know that you don't have to be together or friends or whatever it is forever. It's the ever-evolving, valuable chaos of life. Was that a bit too broad of an analogy, was it, mate?
I was waiting for the revolving door. And then you went chaos. I was like, yeah, that works too.
Revolving door is true. Within and without.
Yeah.
You become more. You interact with those core senses of self differently.
That's it.
And they present differently. It's the ability to acknowledge that for what it is and find value in those things for what they are in that moment. And move forward anyway.
Yeah.
I had a thing. And it's gone. Anyway.
And now you're really hard.
And trying to force it to come back.
I was going to say, it looks like you're trying to force it out there. No, that's it.
Give me about half an hour after we press stop and it'll come back to me.
I'll get a message. I'm like, I got it.
Yeah, cool. Can you edit into the end? Yeah, anyway.
So recapping then.
Mm-hmm.
Self-advocacy.
Nailed
it. And selfishness. Like, I don't know. For me, I believe it's a case of, like, as you said, what am I doing? Am I doing something to give something back to myself, or am I doing something to take something from somebody else? Because it can be dressed up and down however it, you know, is like you can be giving something to yourself and still be called selfish, you know, and you can be taking something from somebody else and, you know, be, oh, that's just the way they are.
Be called ambitious or driven.
Yeah, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So it all comes back to, you know, where your line is. How do you see yourself advocating for you, placing those boundaries down? What do they look like? As you said, what are your non-negotiables? What are you wanting to communicate about? Are you willing to allow other people to have opinions that may not align with yours and them just be opinions and not be anything else? Unless they're really intentionally to fucking, you know, destroy somebody, and then that's a whole nother conversation. Or are you triggered by those? And if that's the case, well, it kind of tells you more about you than anybody else.
Everyone needs therapy. Assuming that and doing your best anyway is more often than not the best we've got. If you're doing yours, no matter what that looks like, and this is a conversation about, you know, self-care again. If you're doing yours and you go about your business with your best of intentions, that's all you can control.
Yep.
It really, really is. Everything else, you're going to have to just figure out. And yeah, if someone else isn't prepared to figure themselves out, then it's not on you to figure it out, but you kind of want to have some idea of who you're dealing with.
Yeah, exactly.
Just investing a bit of thought in that. It's like, well, okay, if this person works this way, then this is probably what I'm going to need to do and to manage myself in that space.
Yeah, exactly. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Is it something I'm willing to do? Is it something I'm not willing to do?
Yeah.
Is this not aligned with me? Is it all right? Yeah. All those things.
I'm still stuck on that thing.
I know, right? I'm looking at you going, you've got the fucking concentration face on hard.
Yeah. I think that's a neurological thing.
Yeah.
So apparently if you can't think of the word, the more you think about it, the more you sort of do not allow your subconscious to create space for it to come back.
Yeah.
Because you're too busy trying to ego your way through.
Oh.
How's that?
I think it was good.
As is always the case. Everything kind of boils down to a balance.
Yep.
It's like, who are you and how does that play out? There it is.
Got it. Yay. So before we go, this better be good.
I think it is. Those things that are fundamentally true of you. You were saying that, like, is it like a line in the sand, or is it an ever like? It's because you are an ever evolving person that, let alone anything outside and around you. It's like you evolve with more information, more feeling state, more experience to manifest those core values within you, those fundamental non-negotiablenesses that are you. So it's like, as you realize how you want to live those out and differently prioritize things, will change how you self-advocate, how you do or don't listen to other people trying to call you selfish for that. as I've said a couple of times already, and quietly confident someone will back me up here, it's like you are built to evolve, literally. Moment to moment, day to day. You learn more stuff, you integrate more stuff, you get smarter.
Human beings are meant for goals. Like, they're meant to grow, learn, evolve. They're meant to have goals. They're meant to have aspirations, all of those sort of things. It's how we thrive. A lot of beige, I guess. Like,
You're really happy with that word, aren't
oh, mate, that word is stuck. I've even started using it with clients, and I'm like, oh, fuck, there it is.
It's pretty on point, isn't it?
Well, it is pretty on point, you know, and then, like, because sometimes, like, even the word, like, depression and, you know, and those conditions and stuff like that, there is so many different facets and things around depression, but it's all been put into one little box when, you know, it is a chemical imbalance in the brain. It is environmental. It is, you know, emotional. It is all of the things. And one of the things that can bring on depression-like symptoms is not having goals and aspirations, because that's how we're built. We're literally made to grow and evolve. We're not meant to stay the same. We never were.
I sometimes wonder if sometimes those goals and aspirations aren't even necessarily a conscious and intentional thing. It's just almost that as you learn more, as you interact more with the world around you, you become more because you've gathered more to you.
Yeah.
Whether that's aimed at something specific or whether it's just the inbuilt awesomeness that is you as a human. Anyway, we brought that back up because I finally clicked back in.
Yeah.
Is to say that your job as a human, as a meat popsicle piloted around by a spirit ghost, is to be self-aware enough so that you can accommodate not only for who you fundamentally are, that cemented version of you that is just you, but also the growth that comes along with that, to adapt and adjust and integrate that so that the outside stimulus is accommodated for in the same way that the inside stimulus is accommodated for, and you become more moment to moment, day to day. That's the whole point of shadow integration, is that you're becoming more.
Yeah.
Those things are there and they're cool. You just don't know it yet.
Satisfied now?
Yeah.
Happy now? You thought of
It's
it?
no
You
longer
remembered it?
tongue-tipped and stunted for that. How do we feel about that one, Sky?
I feel good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looking forward to the next episode.
Do we remember what that one is? Because I don't. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, I do, so that's okay.
Okay. I notice you're being very evasive with what it's about, so maybe I'll put you on the spot and throw you under the bus. Anyway, let's not do that to you. Okay. All right. All right. In that case, be good.
Be kind.
Be smart.
What is it?
You don't like it when it's reversed, do you?
No, I don't.
Be
You
your best you.
Be your best too. That's it.
No bar fights.
Oh, I'm supposed to say no bar fights.
What's that about bar fights, Guy?
No bar fights.
Bye, guys.
Bye.